In this video, we're going to be covering how to change the core color of a mat. This is one question we get quite frequently. So the first thing we need to do, of course, is to create a mat to work with. So we'll just do a basic 10 by 20 at 300. And then I'll use the shape tool here inside Photoshop to draw out my mat opening. And then I will use Photoshop to duplicate the existing shape. And I will select all three shapes and space them evenly and put them in the center of my document. Now with all three shapes selected, I can choose the Create Double Mat function in EZMats Designer. Go ahead and set my offset to be 1/4 of an inch. And just that quickly, we get our double mat. Now, if you look at what this consists of, it consists of our original three shapes that we created, and then we have a outer mat layer, an inner mat layer, and then we have the outer mat bevel as well as the inner mat bevel. And it's these two layers, the bevel layer. See, if I turn that off, we lose the bevel, and then we have the outer bevel. So it's these two layers that we manipulate and modify for what we're going to do. Now, because this is a common task, it may be sensible to actually create an action to record the steps that we're going to do. So I'm going to come up here to my Actions palette inside Photoshop. And if you don't have your Actions palette open, you just go to the Window menu and choose Actions. But let's create a new action set by clicking on this button right here. And let's just go ahead and call it EZMats Designer. And of course, you don't have to do this, but might as well, because this is something you're probably going to, if you want to do it, it's something you're probably going to want to do over and over again. So we have a new action set called EZMats Designer, and let's go ahead and create a new action, and let's just call it Change Mat Core Color. And we'll go ahead and hit record. Very good. So now every step that we do will be recorded. So let's go back over to our Layers palette. Now what we're going to do here is simply, we already have the outer mat bevel layer selected, but I'm going to deliberately select a different layer. And then I'm going to control or command click for you Mac folks, but control click on the inner mat bevel, not over here where the text is, but over here where the actual thumbnail of the layer is. So hit your control key, click, or again for you Mac folks it would be your command key. And basically what that does is it selects the entire contents of your layer. And then I'm going to come down here and click on this button right next to FX called Add Layer Mask. And that will add a layer mask to my inner mat bevel layer. And then from there, I'm going to add a color overlay layer, but via a layer style. So I click on Add Layer Style. We're going to go with a color overlay. And by default it changes it to red. And then I'm just going to pick something to start with, and usually what I do for this kind of generic version is I will pick like maybe a dark shade of gray, something like that, and I usually bring the opacity down to about 50%. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what you do. That's just usually what I do as a starting point. And this will all make more sense here in a moment. So let's go ahead and click OK. And that's it. Our action is recorded. So let's go back over to the Actions palette and hit Stop. And let's take a moment and look at the action that we created. So the first thing you see, it says Select Inner Mat Bevel. And I did that deliberately because sometimes that trips people up. And that first step we don't actually want, because what we actually want to do is we want to target the layer that we want to apply the action to and apply the action to that layer, not always to the inner mat bevel layer. So the first thing we need to do is simply delete that first step. If you get one of those erroneous steps in your action, you could just delete it. So now we're set with Set Selection of Transparency Channel, make a new channel, right, using Reveal Selection. And then the last step is to actually set the layer style of the current layer. Now, what we want to do on that last step is check this box right here. So what's going to happen, instead of just applying that gray color overlay, it's going to apply the gray color overlay and give us a dialog box to modify it if that's what we want to do. So let's zoom in closely here so we can see this in action. We're going to pay attention to this and this. So back over here on layers, right here, outer matte bevel, we're going to go ahead and play this action that we just created. Change matte core color. So let's go ahead and hit play. And you can see, did you see those two outer bevels change? And so it gives us a dialog box, and now we can actually modify this. So we can come up here and, you know, if you, whatever color you want, you know, if you want like a tannish color, well then we'll kind of come in here to our yellowish, and then you just kind of get the color of the core that you're looking for. And this is kind of be a double combination. And what you see on your screen isn't necessarily what you're going to get in print either, so kind of keep that in mind. It will take a little bit of experimentation, and then of course you can dial it up, dial it down, using the opacity slider to get just the look that you're looking for. And it is a bit of a balancing act, because you do want to see, ideally, you do want to see the miter joints. There is a little bit of texture that's applied to this core too, so you don't want to cover it up too much or too little. You know, you just kind of have to play with it to get the look that you want. And then we can go ahead and click on OK, and there you have it. Now, oftentimes when we apply, especially on a double layer mat or even a triple layer or whatever you might be doing, we've already applied this layer style to one layer. If we want to copy that to the other layer, all we have to do is right here on the layer style part, we're just going to kind of hover over the color overlay. All we have to do is Alt or Option click for you Mac folks and drag down to inner matte bevel. Even if there's already something applied to it, that's okay. Just drag it down, and you see, I don't know if you can see right there on my cursor, that double arrow. When you do that, that means duplicate it. Boom. And now we've just copied that layer style down to here. That's kind of how I've always done it. Now you can right click, copy layer style, come down here, right click, paste layer style. That has the exact same effect. But I always, just because I've always gotten the habit, just drag it to the layer that I want. But either way is acceptable. Now, when you're doing this changing of the matte color, there's probably going to be times where you're going to do this over and over and over again. And the real challenge is here, you may really like this particular color and use it quite often. And so you don't want to have to remember all the values you use to attain this exact color. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the extra credit and show you how to manipulate the action so that we get the color we always want. So here's what we need to do. We have an existing action that does what we're looking to do. So let's go ahead and just drag it to the new action icon, and that will make a duplicate of it. And let's say, for example, I want to create an action that changes my matte color to black. So this one in particular will only change the color to black. Let's go back and make sure. So I do have my inner matte bevel layer selected, which is good. So we're going to come down here, and what we're going to do is we're going to modify this last step where we apply the color. So we're going to uncheck this, and let's expand that out. If we just double click on that, we're going to change the color. So we're going to choose black. Now when you choose black, and especially if you choose it at 100% opacity, it doesn't really have much opportunity to reflect light. So you don't see the texture and you don't see the miter. And so usually what I do is it's black, but I lower the opacity, so you just see that just a little bit. You know, from a distance you won't really notice it, but if you're right up close, you will. And if you ever looked at a real cut matte with a black core, you see it, you wouldn't see a very distinct miter joint anyhow, or you know, the actual core texture. So whatever you think looks good, I'm going to say 80% because I like nice round numbers, and you can see that miter just ever so slightly. So I'm going to be happy with that. and then I could go ahead and click OK. And so you see here, this step now, if I were to click on a different layer, like this one right here, I could actually play just that one step. You know how to do that? Because that's pretty helpful. Because see, if we were to play this whole action, we wouldn't be able to play the whole action because this layer, there we go. So now we've gotten rid of our color overlay layer styles. And now we can see if that action works to change this to a black matte core. So we hit play. Sure enough, that works. And then down here, and we'll hit play. Perfect. So that does exactly what we're looking to do. Now, if we really wanted to get technical and savvy, we could actually make this action even more intelligent by right here, this option right here, we would have a step in here where we would actually play a script. And the script would detect whether or not a layer mask existed or not. And if it didn't, it would create one for us. Where in this case, we're telling it to create a layer mask all the time for us. But that's really beyond the scope of the video. But at any rate, that's how you would go about changing the matte core color to be whatever it is you wanted it to be. And that actually can be quite useful. And now there's lots of ways to skin a cat inside Photoshop, but that is, to me, the easiest way to go about it. So key thing to keep in mind is that once we create our matte, so let's go ahead and delete that layer mask. Once we've created our matte, then we know that we have to control click, command click on the layer mask, or the layer icon, add the layer mask. Then on the layer mask, then we could go ahead and apply any type of overlay to that bevel, and the layer mask will have that effect only the bevel and not the entire layer. Okay, so hopefully that will be of help to you, and I'll let you create some different types of effects here using EZMats Designer. Thanks for watching.